Hello and welcome to the first of the Challenger series. So this is the inaugural outing, and the subject today is going to be branding, identity, logos, and the whole evolving world of brand design, and in particular what good looks like and what bad looks like. And I'm delighted to say you don't have to hear it from me. We've got two experts here. In Gary Holt, who's the founder of Someone, the multi-award winning design agency, and Laura Hussey, who's the executive creative director of Someone. And we're going to be talking in detail, actually, in long form, about the ins and outs of branding and what we see as the most successful and most distinctive approach. So my first question I'm going to aim at you, Gary, is you and I were lucky enough to work with the great Martin Lambiné, God rest his soul, and we worked in this building actually. Can we have a little pan around Martin's old residence? And I mean, I learnt a lot off him, but you learnt considerably more because you worked with him for a long time. But in a way, he was the godfather of modern branding. I think potentially is underestimated. I'm right in saying he introduced 360-degree branding, didn't he?
Yes, I don't think he called it that. I don't think he understood a name for it as much. Well, he did he? Okay, not to me.
No.
Didn't reveal that secret for a while then. So I worked with Martin for about 10 years. In fact, he was my external examiner at university. So I had no choice in the matter. He did, and I learned so much from him. In fact, I'll argue the world of branding learned so much from him just because of his approach. It's because he came from a TV background. He came from branding pre-digital, but with a digital mindset. So it's about what does in fact, no, before I say that, at the time I arrived, everyone talked about corporate identity. That's what it was. He didn't. He talked about branding. He talked around the idea that what does a brand sound like? Because it was televisual. What does it look like? How does it move? Yeah. He was even bold enough to actually be quite dismissive of logos. I know you introduced it as we're going to talk about logos. He was quite...
I did that to annoy you.
But no, that's just the bit that appears in the top corner of a screen. What happens if you put your hand over it? I think we're going to talk about that later. But I mean, certainly, and then when we then worked on O2, which I think we might come to.
Yes.
But it was that idea of 360, yes. It was all avenues. We're going to talk about tone of voice later, how things move. I mean, that's why I say I don't think he's necessarily recognised for the influence that he had.
No, I mean,
and also the relationships across the industry.
I think one of the fascinating things from an ad agency point of view, because O2 was our founding client, and I think it was a brilliant piece of design. A brilliant piece of conceptual thinking as well as design, which nearly all good design is, of course. He was rare amongst designers who are quite purist often, in that he actually liked ad agencies rather than detested them. I remember when I worked on Orange with Rooney and Doug Hamilton from Lambiné, they were permanently advertising agency, creative director.
Yeah, he was Wolf Holland, wasn't he?
And Wolf Holland, it was almost a rivalry. It was a healthy rivalry, but it was a rivalry. Whereas, because of his belief in living brands and indelible branding, Martin ran towards the ad agency because they would bring it to life. Yeah. So we had a much, well, in fact, you Lambiné incubated VCCP, as you will.
Yeah, we all squeezed over, and then you took over the whole building.
And Laura, you worked with Martin briefly, didn't you, when he worked with Someone as a consultant on the
Royal Opera House. Yeah.
What was your experience?
Fantastic. I mean, that was kind of actually trying to create a digital logo from what was a crest. So, it was carved and it wasn't created to be a black and white. But yeah, really interesting to understand how the whole brand world itself works, not just the logo itself. Yeah.
So, famously, probably his most famous single piece of work was the Channel 4 identity, which we have up here. And as you say, that was a broadcast, so that in itself was a discipline, not for it just to be a badge or a logo. And I mean, one of the things I think is extraordinary about it is that it's kept relevant.
That's going longer than O2. I mean, O2's I think the clues in the title there. I mean, 2002 that launched, and it's still the same. Channel 4, still the same. I mean, it doesn't matter which derivative you look at, whether it's E4 or it's still the same core idea.
Yeah.
And it was actually the first, I think it was the first computer-generated identity. We had to do it in the States because there wasn't the technology here. But again, it was the idea of what does it represent, component parts coming together, sound design, movement. Just the start of tone of voice, but I think I've already mentioned we might come on to that.
Because it grew into its tone of voice, didn't it? I mean, one of the things we are going to come on to is the difference between consistency and cohesion. So how do you keep something constant but always new is what we would call the art of the brand world, which is a very different point from policing a logo or having, if you like, a conventional corporate identity. They're very different things. One's living and breathing and one's quite fixed. And you actually need the combination of the two. But before we move on, does anyone want a hot drink?
Coffee for me.
No, tea.
Oh, you're
Can I have
a
tea?
lady.
Yeah, no, you can have a tea. But I'm going to do the coffee first. And the thing behind me here, I can't look because I'm pouring, is the first ad that VCCP produced for O2, which, and this isn't made up, this is a double page spread in the Times.
Thank you.
Which was, sorry, someone's going to have to follow me over because I'm going to go and do my tea duties. Because it launched on the 2nd of the 2nd, 2002, which was an awful long time ago. I'm just heating the pot up.
Thank you. 3 times, please. Yeah.
Because what I think it's very difficult to remember a time that was long before the smartphone, long before Apple, which actually O2 had an exclusive on. And, well, Gary, you know the story, don't you? Because you were there before me. But essentially, there was already a view amongst a lot of, especially heavy users of the mobile phone. I'll actually do this and then we can speak again, because this could be a bit noisy. Here it goes. There was already a view that the phone was becoming kind of about the most important thing in your pocket. In fact, someone said, I'd rather lose my house keys or my wallet, rather than my phone.
That was we were actually pitching for it, and that's where the name came from.
Yeah,
and it came from.
Which is an amazing
story.
That
was the research, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the vox pops on the street.
Yeah. So the idea of digital oxygen and essential for life came from someone down there who didn't get paid any money, unfortunately, for him or her. But that amazing insight was quite ahead of its time, and this identity. Can we wander over and have a look?
I mean, it's worth mentioning as you're walking over that thank you for using the phrase, but the 4 of you ran towards the identity. It wasn't just Martin's willingness to work with agencies. It was understanding of it.
Well,
360.
Yes. Well, we set up as an agency that wanted to do entirely integrated work. We'd done it a few times in our various different agencies at Howell Henry and BBH and WCRS, and we didn't understand why there was this, we thought, false distinction between design and advertising, or even within advertising, television and print and online. There was all these weird artificial distinctions. So we did run towards Lambinaine. Interestingly, though, the other agency in the pitch ran away and were a bit snooty, weren't they?
They were.
A bit snooty. And lost the pitch, I think, entirely as a result of not embracing the brand world. And I think, in a way, brands like O2 were going to come on to Cadbury have become emblematic of modern success, because you can't afford to have a fragmented or atomized presentation of your brand. It's so difficult to win attention that you have to have that cohesion and singularity. But we'll come on to all the rest in a moment. So O2, digital oxygen, and a brilliant thought, a brilliant conceptual thought, at the same time brilliantly recognised in this and captured in this sort of iconography and imagery, which is very fresh and elemental. This the reason I'm sort of heading back to you two now is it's kind of an example of this system, this methodology you use to create brand worlds. This isn't a brand, this is a brand world.
Yeah. I mean, we both work with O2 and Telefonica. I mean, Laura, do you want to walk? I mean,
this beautifully underwhelming slide here.
The dullest picture in the
room. And the reason it is
but don't worry, because Freddie will. If we just have the camera on Freddie for a second, he'll flash through lots of brilliant brand worlds through some magnificent bit of editing.
Well, obviously, there's the fixed assets at the top, which are the sort of standard corporate identity when you were talking back at sort of the beginning of time when we did it. And you'd get a logo, and you'd have a typeface and a colour system, and maybe you might have a narrative and a strapline. And of course, you might have some language or tone of voice, but they're the bits that you sort of don't touch, and they're the bits that are the ones that I guess you police quite hard. But they're all really quite boring, and a lot of brands will only think that they need that to be in business. Where it becomes really interesting is when you start creating the elements underneath it that underpin it. So a brand property, what's that? Well, for O2, that's the bubbles, but the bubbles appear in lots of different ways. They can create different behaviours, or it's the Adidas. We happen to both be wearing the same shoes today, but it could be the 3 stripes. That's another brand property. Then you've got that brand imagery, you've got brand behaviours, how the brand acts, and also sort of interaction principles and how it behaves online. But these are the bits that can change and adapt over time. They can react to things that are happening in culture, but you have those sort of forced bits that are up at the top. So the O2 logo is actually, dare I say it, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Pretty basic,
so.
Pretty basic, blue colour, but the bubbles are here where it begins to become alive and sort of starts breathing.
And the other thing that I think made the marriage between Lambinet and VCCP very successful, now someone in VCCP, although I wish my friends at Lambinet very well, is it changed into Super Union or something?
And now Design Bridge, yeah.
Is that marriage of a brilliant thought captured brilliantly in imagery, and it's a lethal combination. And to your point, Laura, that this is just old school corporate identity. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not the future. And
it's not enough.
It's not enough, and this is where the game is now. And one of the things, again, this is a point we'll come on to, is it's interesting how few people do develop brand worlds. One of my tests, in fact, this is a really reasonable example, is, put your hand over the logo, and can you tell which brand is communicating with you? Because the branding should be intrinsic. It shouldn't be badged. It should be intrinsic, and it might be tone of voice. It might be imagery. It might be a character or a device. It might be just the sheer visual presentation, but it should be instantly recognisable if it's going to earn its keep. And this is where a lot of that happens. I think Cadbury is a really good example of that distillation of brand identity, so that you can actually remove virtually all the elements. Actually, O2 you could do the same fairly reductive technique to. So this doesn't even have the name or the gold, and yet you know instantly that it's Cadbury. It's got one of the devices. And actually, one of the things we've been doing recently, is we might open one of these soon. Is also, it's all advertising. If you've got a brand world, then your packaging is your advertising. You don't miss a single opportunity. Too many brands don't understand they're a media owner. They think they're an advertiser. And actually, once you've got a brand world, you become your own media. So that's one of the other tricks. The other trick, which is kind of staring you in the face, but often, very seldom is capitalised on, is that you're not really in the business of commercial branding, you're in the business of culture. And I think that's something we're going to come on to very soon, is in our methodology at VCCP, we talk about populating culture. We don't talk about advertising, and we don't talk about sort of interrupting people's attention. How do you win people's attention? How do they want to talk about you? How do you earn talkability? And I think that's kind of one of the acid tests at someone, isn't it? Is start not from how do we badge this, but how will this be adopted?
Yeah. How do we live it? I mean, well, you could argue, I mean, I don't want to, this is not a 101 on brand strategy, but it's important not to be missed on this brand world, is the foundations, as it were, which is the strategy. So you've got concentrated brand idea here, you've got one here. So there was a lot of overlap between us, which I think was important. But this becomes the lens through which you view all this. What do you want the brand to stand for? What are its values? And that tells you, when you start to flex this, that goes back to, I think you put it perfectly, that's the coherent bit, that's the consistent bit. Well, that's why you can actually start to say, well, why is it relevant to me? Why would I talk about it? How do I get involved? And I know this is slightly different, your methodology is slightly different to ours, but when you talk around keeping the conversation going, we talk a lot. So let's imagine this is being designed for a business that doesn't exist or a brand that's going through change. You can set these straight away, but you have to not only start to explore these, you have to actually propel it 5 years in advance. So, well, actually, what might this brand look like in the future? Because if it stays the same...
But that's often our test with a brand property. If we're coming up with multiple different versions at the design stage of what a brand property would be, if we very soon run out of steam and it's not going anywhere, then we know it's not going to live as a brand property for the next 5 years. It has to be adaptable,
No, I mean, longevity is... Well, you look at Cadbury, it's extraordinarily long-lived, run over 200 years now. We've mentioned the phrase, but the phrase that I think to some extent we borrowed off you, Gary, back about 23 years ago was brand world. Our view is you don't create advertising, you don't create communication, you help build a brand world. Everything is advertising, from the packaging through to the advertising, through to the website. And we love this idea that the strongest brands live in a world of their own creation. They don't echo anything else in the market. They define the world they live in. And I actually think quite often those super brands that have achieved that luxury, it's sort of like a first-class ticket through life, have more in common with each other than they do with anything in their market. They have more in common with non-competition than their direct competitors. And it's in everything. So it's in the identity, but it's in the belief system, it's in the way you manage your community, your customers, every touch point, and obviously your look and feel. And it gets quite high concept. When you start thinking about culture rather than communication, you're actually in the world of contemporary culture. And one of the great tributes to any advertising work or any design work is when it's fed back to you. Let's say, so Simples, our Meerkat slogan, is in the Oxford English Dictionary now, just like Brat is now a word. So there's a piece of culture and there's a piece of branding, both in the dictionary. And the reason we've got this Stones album here. Well, Gary, you know a bit more about the history of this piece of design, but basically to set it up, Mick Jagger drove into a Shell service station. This might be an apocryphal story. I thought that compression of communication, that they don't need to say Shell, it's just a logo. And it's a very simplified logo. That I'd love that. I'd love to have that for my band. And he briefed a mate of his, a designer.
A student at the Royal College, who he'd actually worked with before, who designed a poster for them, and he went back and wanted it to be symbolised. I mean, there was a slight nervousness because I'm pretty sure it happened at the same time as Warhol was working on the on Sticky Fingers. There was a bit of that's just a printout. In fact,
I'm going to put this.
You're going to put it on,
I'm
right?
Put it on.
I mean, actually, if you had the original, that's supposed to be a real zip. That's supposed to be a real zip.
I tell you what, Andy Warhol, who was the model?
So there's a student. How do you say his name? Is it John? He was only a student,
and he was on a Morrissey, a Smiths album cover as well, wasn't he?
And so Warhol had designed this, and it had the zip, and there was a nervousness that it was going to offend, which I think it did, but not many. So that was the backup design. I think it's even on the back of that sleeve. That was.
Oh yes, sorry, yeah, that's that way around, yeah.
So that was the original. That's been the redraw. So that's John's original as a student, and it's.
But this sort of took over, didn't it?
Oh, 100%.
As a piece of visual language.
I mean, you mentioned before about populating culture, fashion, in particular, art. It was much better at populating. I'm going to pick on Warhol again. yellow banana. And there was a design that they didn't worry about. What's the corporate font? Where, is it top left on a letterhead? Where do I put it on a business card? There was a nervousness, you could argue, about corporate identity, and there was a freedom, artistic freedom. And just look at that. I mean, it's barely changed since the day it was designed.
Well, and Jay Jagger then, when we worked with her, wanted to have her own lips.
She did, yes, you're right.
I mean, if anyone is allowed, I think, to borrow
and did
that.
she get her own lips?
She has got a logo, one of her logos with lips, yeah.
Right, designed by you?
No, we gave her something different. We were like, let's not do the same thing again.
That's not the same thing as your dad. Yeah. Right, I'm going to put this on, and then we can move on. Hold it a second. Look at this.
Well, we were also wondering about the sort of modern version of, the sort of cultural takeover that the Rolling Stones had, and we were talking about, Brat and
Brat Green.
Yeah, and Charlie XCX
not Klein Blue, but Brat Green.
Yeah. Well, and it was the whole of Gen Z that coined it a Brat Summer.
We've just bought this, so I'll go and open it. Should we go back to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm going to have my tea. I think it'll be ready now.
Yes, it will. Would you like it in a mug or a cup?
Mug, please. Yeah, thank you. So I can pour. Cheers.
Just one thing not to lose. You mentioned that phrase, which we have unembarrassedly just taken, that build a world of your own making, or brand within a world of your own making. As any good branding agency would do, you audit the sector. You look at who's out in the market. It doesn't matter whether you're a fashion brand or a retail brand. You can be a packaging brand. You look at the brands that are around you. But the bit that you miss is your phrase before, Charles, which is around this: what's the brand you want to be? Because there are common factors in super brands. You don't just say, well, actually, we can't be a certain colour because all of our main competitor is. I mean, design the brand for the brand you want to be, as much as being forced into a corner from your competitors.
Well, one of the things is why people don't have this level of discipline. This was another beautiful piece of brand world thinking, and yet there are so few brands that have that singularity and sure-footedness. You immediately think of some of the massive American brands like Apple or Nike who have achieved it over decades. Or you think of an O2, or you think of a Cadbury. And they're always brand leaders, they're always super brands that achieve it. I think of Uniqlo as well as a brand I think is beautifully presented. And yet, you quickly start scratching your head. You can't trot 10 off very quickly, and yet it seems an obvious thing to do. And I think there's loads of barriers to making it happen. One is that there's a limit to how much time Laura and Gary have to give to the client community, obviously. But the other is, well, thoughts on what are the other obstacles that people have to overcome?
Well, I mean, they've got to cut through the amount of social competitiveness. There's loads of content out there, people that are self-creating. E-commerce means that there's a lot of design clutter. So I think one of the reasons that this cut through was because it was incredibly simple and actually had an attitude. It was all about hedonism. It was about take me with my flaws, a bit like Pamela Anderson now going, makeupless.
Yeah.
So I think it was an attitude, but also it cut through because it was really stark and simplistic, but not simple. And I think people being able to pick up on that and start using it on TikTok and all the many different channels that you've got to be across. That's where having something really flexible, and so flexible that all it is a colour, it's pretty clever, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's also known when to turn it off or when to slow it down. I mean, that literally is a colour. I mean, it's even a different font on the inside slightly. I mean, it's not got the treatment.
Well, and purposefully low res
purposely
font.
low res. I mean,
It's actually blurred.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before, and I'm not sure if you were intending to talk about it, but the Meerkat. Simples. So what a phenomenal piece of advertising-driven brand world. But when you actually compare the market, if you're not sure if anyone's ever bought anything from them, there's what we call a degree of furriness when you go through the customer journey. So we call it proximity branding, how close you get. If we were not able to turn Alexander off at a certain point, that brand world's not functioning. Because At that point, I'm about to have a financial transaction, I'm about to send you some money. I don't want a Russian-sounding meerkat telling me. So just in terms of watch outs, again, when we track brands, as we do all the time, sometimes you go, that's going to be a real killer. But it's like you've got all the taps are dialed up to the max. Sometimes it just needs to be that simple.
Yeah, I think the biggest danger is indifference. And you're right, if it's something that's really striking and really cuts through but isn't appropriate, let's say for a financial services brand at the sharp end of a decision, then just don't use it there. Yeah. But don't sacrifice all memorability. I mean, for the sake of a bland idea, because actually there's a phrase, isn't there? And you do see it a lot, this blanding tendency. I don't know why so many brands sort of seem to use the same font, similar colour scheme, drop initials, so drop vowels, but there seems to be a trend quite often to almost converge. I guess, I don't know, what's causing that?
I mean, I think that's trying to appeal to everyone, but perhaps that's starting to change now, because the fact that we can reach so many people now and things happen so quickly, we're not trying to find the common denominator. We're actually trying to have an opinion and catch the right audience. It's not always about catching the whole audience, I think.
No, and yeah, as human beings, we do tend to gravitate towards what's familiar. Yeah.
So there are advantages potentially to.
There are, but not if you're wanting to. I mean, you've mentioned being a challenger agency. I mean, not if you want to win with your brand.
Yeah, no, okay. Because I think another reason for this level of cohesion and constancy over time is rare. Is there are factors like not invented here. Now that might be the ad agency or it might be the new marketing director. So there's a lot of incentive to change something. Sometimes the shock of the new means people don't let something grow into itself. And so that you move on before the idea has established itself. And also, quite often the client organisation is very fragmented. Yeah. And different parts of the organisation are briefing different things or different agencies. And it's not in the agency's interest to run with a competitor's idea. But there's loads of forces that prevent this happening, so you have to fight quite hard. The other is discipline. It sounds like it's easy, and sometimes people go, well, it's easy to do matching luggage, or other phrases are trying to disparage brands like Apple and Nike and O2 and Cadbury and EasyJet and other brands that have that cohesion. And they say, well, it's just an art directional treatment. It isn't, because it's absolutely pervasive. And there is, I think, a kind of meticulousness to it that involves a lot of effort. I mean, a lot of just hard yards, being a bit pedantic. It may be an apocryphal story, but I am told that in every Apple store in the UK pays its weekly fine not to have a no smoking sign up, because a no smoking sign is visual pollution. And they don't believe in visual pollution, and they're so purist in their approach. Now, I don't know whether that's true, and I haven't been into a store to inspect, but it is amazing the level of visual clutter, coming back to your point, that we put up with. And brands suddenly look like, you can look at it, it looks like you've let your grandma decorate your bedroom. Yeah. So where did all this stuff come from? And all clutter along the bottom. And you've got a headline, you've got a subhead, you've got lots of copy, and the determination to absolutely remain clear and remain concise and condensed is difficult to maintain.
I think that's where the brand world's really useful, though, because when you are, particularly if you are handing over as a sort of the designer, if you're handing over a brand corporate identity in the old sense, but a brand world, you are policing the logo and the colour and the type, and you're saying, please keep those consistent, because that's what's going to identify us to our consumers. However, the brand property is where you get to do all the playing. You don't need to play with the logo every single time. You don't need to keep changing the font. the playing area is the brand property, and if people have got a really good brand property where they feel like they've got ownership of the idea every month, every season, every time they want to create a new campaign, then it can keep, just as O2 does, then that keeps the brand fresh, but it keeps it, on brand, as they say, yeah.
And actually that is nicely brand property, because you're the best yodeler here. And actually, sometimes the brand property doesn't come out of the identity, and it's additive. So the Domino's yodel over there.
You mean the domino?
That's what I mean, yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes.
It was an addition to some brilliant design. I mean, this is one of my favourite bits of design. I think it was JKR,
it's great.
which just was so beautifully reductive and so clear and bold and confident.
Would you have dared to take the logo off?
It wouldn't matter, would it? But that is the point. It doesn't require the logo. Sorry, Laura.
It's all right.
Getting you away there. But I'm going to put that on top, and then we can have a nice colour scheme. Look at that. Yes. So it does help maintain this. But these things can, if there's not a bunch of semi-obsessive people involved, it can soon be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think there is a slight obsessiveness required.
I think there's a desire from others to continually reinvent all the time.
Yes.
And that's where it can go wrong,
But that's I mean, that's, to your point earlier, Charles, that can come from anywhere. That can come from client side, new marketing directors. That can come from design teams who come in and I've got a great idea of how to push this into a different direction, just because they want to, or for their portfolio. It does take policing. It takes rigor.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean only reductive. It just takes rigor.
Yeah, I mean, reductive is the wrong word. As I said it, I thought that's the wrong word. I meant distillation, I think. Yeah. Distillation's better. So you just get this very concentrated version of the brand. Because another great test, which my phone's on airplane, but this is in a kind of way the new shop window, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I love the way that Domino's can distill itself down to an app device, an app icon, and still be itself. And I think it's a great test for a brand. Can you survive that? It's a bit like the old-fashioned bar call, where it's no wonder Guinness has a brilliant core identity, because it had to fight with everything else in a noisy bar. Attention. I don't mean stand to attention. I mean the attention war that every brand is fighting. I think that's given a new urgency to the importance of a brand world, because there's just too much to compete with. Well, there's so much to compete with. Which brands are you seeing that you think are winning, outside of obviously the ones we work on, or it can be the ones we work on, are winning the attention war best?
Yeah, good question. I mean, those that are born out of digital must. I don't want to.
I mean, even Guinness, as you mentioned.
Guinness, yes.
I think that's having a resurgence now as well. I mean, it never really went away, but now there seems to be like the zero alcohol Guinness is like the most popular drink for people under 25 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and how to up their sales by saying that actually they're limiting their delivery because they're running out. So.
Also, personality-led brands. I think if people can identify with something that feels, this whole word bandied about, but authentic, that feels joyful, all these sort of social, the numbness of doom scrolling, you want something that, and of course culturally what's happening as well, there's a lot of things that people are feeling quite depressed about.
Yes.
So something that feels joyful, that cuts through all of that, that sort of repetitiveness.
I put Guinness in with Cadbury and a few of the other sort of, Coca-Cola, 100-year plus old brands, where I think they learnt, because they were established way before television, they learnt the hard way that you only have fleeting moments, a billboard or a piece of point of sale. They didn't have much to play with. So they naturally got the importance of those core elements. And Guinness, of course, now, and Cadbury, have got well over 100 years of heritage and mental availability to play with.
Yeah.
But it makes it even more important for new brands to observe those disciplines, in my view.
Yeah.
I think Apple, as a relatively new brand, is a great example of a brand that feels like it's got 100, 150 years of communication heritage behind it because of that concentration.
I mean, we talked very briefly before, interaction principles, what on earth does it mean? And just to link the two questions together, just have a look at someone like Monzo. I mean, who would have thought X amount of years ago, some digital banking brand, I mean, I'm not sure if either of you are Monzo customers, but the very way that you have to apply, I mean, that's an interaction principle. It's not just a set of clicking, actually record yourself, just
yes.
That's memorable in itself.
Yeah.
And it's a different approach. It's much more accessible. It's not what you'd expect from a financial organisation. No, I know that's the question wasn't as specific about that. I mean, how do you get cut through in a world where you've got a second and a half at most? But you've literally, that's where you would just go back to your brand world and what can I dial up when?
Yeah, I mean one of our phrases at VCCP, as you know, is it only works if it all works. So if you take the co-op, which is one of the newer clients we're working for, all the way through to O2, which is our first client, everything has to add up. Everything is a touch point. As I was saying earlier, everything is an ad, and it's very easy to nod and go, yeah, I know, yeah, and then not for that not to happen. Mm-hmm. And there's a great phrase of if you look at all your communication over 5 years and then look back at it, what do you look back on? Do you look back on a trail of communication rubble, where you've changed identity a bit, you've changed your advertising campaign 2 or 3 times, changed your media agency 2 or 3 times, your ad agency, and there's nothing really substantial that's been reinforced? Or do you look back at a communication wall where everything has had a cumulative effect in people's minds, and you've built something really substantial that makes your job easier in the future rather than more difficult? And it's only by doing it, it's difficult to do it forwards. It's only by almost thinking about the consequences of not doing it that you can impose some of those disciplines on yourself. Because otherwise, the new thing is always tempting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something we talked a lot to our designers about. It's something that is part of the very DNA of all of this, but that's actually probably phrased even better. Just treat everything like an ad. Everything you do is an ad. So a number of the sectors we work in, you'll know this, we'll get briefs coming through. They can be comms briefs, they can be design briefs. It doesn't have to have the word just, but it might have the word, it's just tactical. It's not brand, it's just tactical. There's no such thing as just tactical. No matter what you put out there, if it's being put out there, internal as well as external, is brand. That's what you're trying to build. And sometimes they can be the quick wins, because they won't have the big marketing or media budget behind them.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting point, because there are some brands that sort of are more seat of the pants and go, no, we live off tactics. There's a competitor to McDonald's that does that. And you think, I just don't feel you're building as much long-term value. You're not building the same level of predisposition or affinity that McDonald's is building by observing classic super brand behaviours. And you see it in quite a lot of markets, the sort of the brand that is acting like the kind of slight sort of it's not seat of the pants. It's not quite rebel. It's chippy. It's having a little go here and there. And you think, well, that's fine for 3 years, maybe 5 years, but it's unlikely to work for 30 or 50.
Yeah, because to some degree you're defining yourself by those around you, as opposed to the world of your own making.
Yes.
I'd argue, because we get, and this sounds incredibly disparaging, because it's not supposed to be an anti-client comment, but we will often get asked, we need the next Nike, or we need the next colour for Cadbury. And yes. Give us 20 years and we'll deliver it to you. So sometimes it takes that rigour, or it takes something which is a bit of a pivot. It can't be rebel all the time.
No, but what's odd is, because you say, obviously colour is one of the great properties to own, and yet there's, there's a limited number of colours and everyone's trying to do it. Yeah. So that's what was part of the genius of this. It's such an odd colour. Well, it's not that odd, but it's just odd enough. Yeah. And you think, so you can find, there's just a creative genius in finding something that's just distinctive enough, and if you really go for it, you can appropriate it. But then the issue is, this burns brightly and then fades. Mm. And I think that was one of the conversations we were having in our pre-chat of it only gets harder because the noise levels and both in, messaging and visual stimuli get greater and greater. The volume of it all gets greater and greater. So cutting through, and then cutting through over a sustained amount of time is more and more difficult. So that's going to be my I think really my final question, unless you've got any other questions, is what in particular would be your do's and don'ts for the winning memorability, cutting through on a sustained basis?
I wouldn't worry too much about the logo, even though that's the job that we do. It's important, but it's not the main thing. So if you have everyone in the room focused on what the logo is, rather than that kind of core strategy, the concentrated brand idea that's going to keep going. If the concentrated brand idea is true to the brand, then the creative is literally going to, I was going to say gush, that's the wrong word, but you know, come forth, flow really, really easily and keep giving and keep giving. So I think you've got to get that bedrock right first, rather than looking at all the sort of decorative bits on the top. Yeah. Because even though we're in the sort of perceived decorative part, we know that that's surface level unless you can underpin it with a really good concentrated brand idea, and that therefore brings the brand property really useful.
I'm going to repeat myself, which I know is not very good. It's that point around what keeps the conversation going. So let's take Brat, for example. So if you're going to hit the market with something, again, you don't know where it's going to land, but it's quite bold. From a branding, but if you were to try and bring that into our world, is there enough beneath it, surrounding it strategically, that you know you can follow it a second time and a third time? I know it's a bit Blade Runner, but it's that Blade Runnery, but it's that point around those, those that shine brightest can sometimes shine the shortest. Mm-hmm. And we feel very comfortable talking around one-hit wonders in music. We don't talk that often about one-hit wonders when it comes to branding. And that's exactly what you don't want that to be. What was it, the word of 2024 or something like that? Was it?
Yeah, the Collins Dictionary.
Which is amazing, and it's literally, it's come through the wall like a truck, which is brilliant. To answer your question directly, Charles, have you got any idea what's going to come after? I think that's the bit. Be bold, be able to be that bold. You've got two bold things there. You've got dominoes, but do you know what else sits beneath it, through it, underneath it, what underpins it?
Yeah, because
was that just a very long answer?
No, it does. It doesn't. No, it's a very good answer. Both of them are very good answers. I mean, I'd answer my own question. Well, I'll basically borrow off you, Laura, which is that, funnily enough, the intellectual clarity is probably the most important thing for design. Mm. Otherwise, what are you trying to project? So, digital oxygen or generosity, even once you strip it away, you still got the glass and a half there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Owned by you, right by you. That's so Primar. The simples. There's lots of examples of you start from almost a distilled attitude or belief, and then that's captured in one or two graphic elements or devices, and then I love the point of it's never the logo. I'm not saying logos and word marks aren't important, but it's much more important to have the right brand marks and distinctive brand assets. Back to the point of putting your hand over that, you just don't need it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that, so that's not my choice, but that's sufficient. And that to me is where you've really got to the gold standard. Well,
in the very formative years of Someone, we did put out a Logos Dead social media campaign for a while to prompt that very debate. Yeah, because that's the first thing that we get looked at, judged on. historically.
By parents.
By parents,
What
yeah.
do you do? What
you're drawn
logos
today.
have you made?
And what is your best logo then?
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'll give you a moment's thought. Gary, what's your best?
Well, it's behind you, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be that.
You can't claim that one then, Laura.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about the
It's
Royal?
too many. Yeah, the J Jagged. No, that was too old. But I mean, working on the King's Cross identity, that was brilliant. You know, placemaking, that's fantastic. When you live in a city and you see it somewhere.
It's very satisfying when that happens. Yeah. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Very much enjoyed our chat, and we're now going to go and have another cup of coffee, and we can relax.
Great. Maybe not as strong as that one.
No, that was strong. That's the right strength. Thank you.